it has been a long time since I've recorded a fragrance drive along. Obviously, being on holiday and stuff, yeah, it's been a while. But I'm going to do a slightly different series today, a slightly different thing that hopefully it will become a series, let's say, over the next few months. Essentially, I'm always on ChatGPT, as probably some of you know from my videos. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask them if there's any sort of fragrance scent stories out there. Because again, I'm sure there's some amazing stories regarding smells that we've never really heard of. So I got sort of ChatGPT on it yesterday, and over the next few months I'm going to tell you some stories, some true stories and some that aren't true. And that's what we're going to start with today. Is basically at the end of the video, once I've told you today's story, I want you to guess if this is actually something that's out there on the internet. Is it, you know, something that might be true, or if I completely made it up and it's a completely false story. So we're going to start that series essentially today, and let me know if this is something you'd be interested in future videos as well. But we're going to talk about a story that originated in 1934, and it was in Scotland, and the gentleman in question here was a bloke called Spencer Turret. Yes, Spencer Turret. So essentially he was well known in his local area in Scotland because he ran a repair shop. It was like a family owned business. He took it on from his dad. I think his dad took it on from his granddad, or his dad, so Spencer Turret's granddad. And it was just very well known. So if you had things like a broken clock, broken watch, or any sort of mechanical device, he was always there to essentially try and repair it. And essentially what he'd say is, leave it with me. You probably wouldn't hear from him for a week or two, then he'd give you a call and say it's all fixed, and you pick it up and pay him. Now, he was a bit of an outsider, even though obviously well known for his repair shop. He wasn't someone who mixed with the locals or anything like that. The only time I think people really ever saw him was very early in the morning. He used to pick up like his it was like a prescription for his wife. Again, she never went out. I don't think she was ever very well. But he had a little dog called Rover, and Rover would basically he'd go and get the ointment, take it in his mouth to walk it home, and then obviously Spencer would give it to his wife. But the main thing, or the main talk, what everyone used to say about him, was not always just about the fact he was amazing at repairing these clocks and watches and all these things. It was actually more the fact his shop had this very nice distinctive smell. And a lot of customers would come in and say, that's really nice, what is that smell, where is it coming from? And all he would say is, it's my special recipe. So, you know, people used to laugh about it, but a lot of the customers, even though they'd be like, oh okay, they were really desperate to actually find out what it was, because it was such a nice smell. It was described as being slightly smoky, almost like a bit of incense, and people used to think it was almost like those incense sticks that he was kind of burning down. But it just had this really strong smell. You knew that smell. It was almost that sort of thing that people go, that smells like his shop. You know, it was a very distinctive smell, and you could almost, like, before you walked in, you could pick it up. So he had this kind of reputation. Again, he was a bit of a loner, but he was one of those loners that just drew a lot of attention just through the fact he was so different to everyone else. Now, so the shop, again, the story started in 1934. The kind of next part of the story is 1941. Started to see less and less of him. The shop was still open. He was still sort of helping out, but he wasn't going out so much. You know, I think his wife, they think, had died. They don't really know, but he hadn't been going to the pharmacies so much. And I think his dog was getting quite old and frail, so he couldn't really walk as well. But yeah, there was this gentleman who went into the shop, which I think is where this story originated from, who, again, I think he was on holiday, and his watch broke, and he went in and said, you know, I've heard that you repair watches. And the first thing that he noticed when he went in was just, again, how strong this smell was. He said, wow, that is really, really strong. And he said, that's nice, what is that? Can I buy that? And Spencer said, unfortunately not. It's my special recipe, and it'll always be secret. So the gentleman was like, okay, that's a bit weird. He wasn't very jokey this time when he was saying about this. Anyway, a few days later, he obviously gets the phone call. Your watch is repaired. Hope you're still here, because obviously I know he was on holiday. comes in the shop, and at the time again, Spencer was getting quite frail, so he wasn't maybe hearing people walk in the shop in the same way. And the gentleman was just looking around while he was waiting for him to come out. You know, he's going hello, hello, and then he noticed around that it was clutter everywhere. You know, there was like screws and nails and like broken clocks. It was almost like he would take bits off other bits of equipment to repair these devices. But he also noticed that smell, and he was going, that smell is getting stronger and stronger. And he, every time he's walking nearer to a certain part of the shop, he's like, I'm sure I'm getting closer to it. And what he found was like this little safe. Obviously it was like a coded safe, so you couldn't get into it. And then Spencer suddenly appeared, and he said, oh, sorry, I was just being nosy. Didn't say really anything to him, just gave him the watch, and he left. He didn't think much of it. But this gentleman had been on holiday, was like, I wonder what was in that safe, because that was around the area where the smell was really, really strong. And again, it was like this nice incense stick sort of smell, and he was like, well, maybe he's just got incense sticks in there. But again, it was a smell that nobody had ever really picked up before. It just didn't smell like anything else. It was, again, it just left a lasting impression. So anyway, before this gentleman was just finishing his holiday, he said, oh, I'm going to just go back and just give that guy some money just as a thank you. Again, my watch is perfect. I'm going to, give him some more cash as a bit of a thank you. Goes in the shop, realises it's all boarded up. He's like, oh, what's happened here? There's nothing open now. It's happened. And then he heard from a local, again, he was a local character, but unfortunately Stanley had passed away. Spencer had passed away. And of course everyone in the local area was quite upset, and they were wondering where they're going to go to now. But as you got to do, you've got to do a bit of a post-mortem and those sorts of things. So just the general cause of death, he was just getting quite frail. It was kind of just put down, I think, as old age. So yeah, no real surprise there. I think they said he was about 93, but again, nobody knew too much about him. So anyway, that was that. And then essentially, again, just trying to clear the shop, trying to get rid of the evidence. There wasn't really any family to kind of give all the stuff to. They threw most of the stuff away, but of course there was this safe, and the safe, they obviously didn't know the codes, they couldn't get into it, but eventually they thought, well, we've got to get into this safe. And again, there's this really strong, prominent smell. What is that? We need to find out what it is. There might be something in there, a message, something where they can maybe get in contact with the family, because obviously safes normally have personal info in. So they do break into it. The police and the officers who just went to check, they were worried obviously at first there might be some foul play, and they found this note, and it was like a ripped bit of paper. It was all like scrumpled up essentially, and it said circa 1901, the special recipe. And obviously it was like, well, people knew that wasn't his handwriting, because obviously they'd had receipts from him in the past about when to pick things up and all these other bits. So they knew it wasn't his handwriting. And at the bottom it said Stanley, and it was Stanley who was his dad. So obviously Spencer was his name, Stanley was his dad. And the special recipe, it was essentially a combination of these oils that created this aroma. So again, it did have like incense in it, it had a bergamot in it, and it was essentially, it was basically how to create this aroma. And it was in like a little, next to it there was like this little test tube or a little beaker, which it said boil for 5 minutes under sort of like a little stove or a little flame. And everyone was like, well, maybe this is that smell we're getting from his shop. So they heated it up, and that's what they found it was. It was just literally this combination of oils. So you had like bergamot oil, you had, again, a bit of incense, and they think that recipe card that was obviously handwritten by his dad many years ago and carried on through Spencer's life. Stuck at the lights, here we go. May have been the origins of where a lot of modern fragrances have been, because as we know, again, a lot of notes now in perfumes, they do change over time. You know, there's old school smells and the modern smells are very different, but they think some of the origins of some of maybe, well, we call them retro scents now, like Aramis, and you know, some of the scents that came out even before Aramis in the 1930s, 1940s, came from this gentleman in Scotland in a little safe from his repair shop. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Again, I spent a lot of time looking at stories from ChatGPT yesterday, and there's some very interesting ones. So obviously that's the end of this story today. Essentially, that's maybe the origins of where some of retro but modern perfumery started, from this repair shop. And yeah, I think hopefully, whether they're true or not true, some of the ones that you'll hear in the next few weeks and months, you'll find them interesting, because some are almost unbelievable to the point you go, well, that can't be true, and then you'll be in for a shock when I put the source up at the next video, or in the comments, I should say. I think it'd be too long to wait if you want to know the answer. So what I'm essentially going to do now, I'm going to leave it up to you. Is that story true or is it false? And yeah, comment below. What I'll do is I'll put the sort of answer of whether it's true or false, or based on true events, and I'll put the link in the chat if it is true. So yeah, there we go. That is it for today. I enjoyed telling a bit of a story. I don't think I've ever done like fragrance stories before, and I've asked ChatGPT in the past to make me a story which I can do for my fitness workout in the day, and obviously I've never had one where I thought, oh, that really works for what I'm doing. So I think maybe doing it on a drive along and talking stories in this was probably a better option. So yeah, most importantly, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's given you a chance to have a bit of a guess, and as I always say, remember, sometimes you have to see it to believe it, because I've read many things in the world that are beyond belief, and sometimes when you find out they're real, that makes it even more scary and more interesting, and you want to learn more. So yeah, let me know in the comments below, true or false, and I'll reveal later on today what the outcome was. Thanks for watching, catch you later.